See, let me admit them. Uh, I met with about 30 people yesterday, just people I've been working with closely, some for years. And we had a little meditation and conversation session. We do that about once a month on the last Saturday. And the topic that emerged was joy. They were wondering about joy. Where's the joy? And it sort of dovetails with what I wanted to talk about anyway, because I want to go into emotions, uh, uh, into the whole complex world of emotions, and using both Tibetans and Sufi guidance for that, so we can get a little different idea of what emotions are. A little, we don't have much uh, training. I don't think I ever had even a 5 minute 5 minutes on it in school in my whatever, how many ever years, 17 years of school or whatever. So it'd be nice for us to do 10 or 15 minutes on emotions, and also to look at things that aren't emotions, but maybe are more important, things like uh, joy. So I'm going to start out just with a rendering of a Rumi poem for you. So we're come from the Sufi tradition in the beginning, and we'll go from there. So let's just start there. We'll sort of the poem, when we if we can break it open a little bit, there's a terrific amount of energy in it for all of us. So this is the Guest House. It's a little different rendering from the Coleman Barks version that you might know. Goes like this: the Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every moment a new arrival. A high, a low, an apathy, or some other momentary arising comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if there are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the center. We'll go into this a little bit, open this up a little bit for a few minutes. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, every moment, a new arrival, moment by moment. It's like we're the guest house, and every moment, a new arrival. A high, a low, an apathy, or some other momentary arising comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Well, let's look at that one, what we can learn there. And it's a moment by moment reality. You're sailing along, and then all of a sudden, you're in the ditch. How does that happen? Uh, the Tibetans say there's three kinds of emotion, and they have their own terminology, but essentially there's there's an emotion, then you're feeling high and great, and then there's an emotion you're feeling low and terrible. But the Tibetans are very subtle. They've studied this world. They said there's a third kind of emotion, which they call a neutral emotion. And the closest word we have to that is, apathy. Couldn't care less. So we're always, then that could just sink into you, where it's not really a high, it's not really a low, but it's just this feeling like, who gives a shit? I couldn't care less what's going on. So they talk about those three ranges of emotions. They call, the low ones afflictive emotions, and sometimes they're called good and bad, but really that's not the category. These are just thoughts that are rebounding in your body, somehow triggered, all hooked up with your ego. I mean, the Tibetans are sure of that. And so they're not bad, they're not good, but they are very powerful sometimes. They can take over your whole life. In the Middle Ages, in European Christianity, they called these demons. When Jesus cast out the demons, uh, they called them demons because it seemed like a power that took over the people. And in light of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, that's what Eckhart Tolle talks about, the low ones, the pain body. You can sort of take you over, and so they called them demons or passions, but really, they're just some part of your ego gets pushed. If you get exactly what your ego wants, you get sort of high. And if you get something that the ego doesn't want, then it goes low. And in some cases, you're not getting anything one way or another. And then you're sort of in this neutral stance. Yeah. So I think that's more accurate because they're ego states, they're egoic states, most emotions. That's the first thing to think about. And they're not good or bad, but we got to deal with them. And you notice how Rumi says, welcome and entertain them all, which means open door policy on this. I mean, I'm sort of a repressor of emotions. Some people are more actor outers. And then some, we all do both, but we have our tendencies when an emotion starts to come up for a guy like me. It gets halfway up and recovering from this, thanks to guys like Rumi and all my teachers. But prior to that, they didn't even get up. I would just push them all down. I'm a repressor, and there's certain temperaments that do that. That's their preferred form of not letting the emotions in, not inviting them in. Remember, our consciousness is the guest house. We're not the guest. So when you say I'm mad, not actually accurate. There's anger rising in you. It just showed up. All right, invite it in. Now, and this seems to be sort of dangerous, rather than getting it out of there. Some people are actor outers. They can't deal with the anger. They don't even get up the front walk. They give it to you. Okay, so there's acting out and repressing. Okay, these are the two major ways we don't, the third way is invite it in. In other words, realize something's happening. It's not good or bad, it's just in you. And so when he says welcome, open the door and entertain them all, just sit down, have a cup of tea with it. Okay, anger, jealousy. Haven't seen you around a while. What's up? You can have this attitude of where you don't have to be afraid of this stuff. Now, the second stanza goes even further. Even if there's a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. So even these major things that happen, and he's sort of talking about grief there, which grief is probably one of the deepest and probably has the most potential if you can work with it, because it's just something, it's probably the most common human emotion, because we all lose stuff. You're going to keep on losing stuff. The older you get, we lose stuff. And so he says, even if there's a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Well, the Sufis coined the term a blessing in disguise and snuck it in through North Africa into France, into that term came into European consciousness, that things could be a blessing in disguise. Well, the Sufis consider everything in consciousness as guidance, if you're conscious to it, if you're not pushing it down or acting it out, if you can just entertain it. Now, sorrow, it just has to be opened up to and worked with. A lot of energy in all this. Sorrow seems to be sort of on the low end of the spectrum. But still, the good thing about emotion is, and the undeniable thing about emotion is, it has a lot of energy. And when you repress it, you're repressing that energy. It's not available to you. And if you're acting it out, uh, then it's not available to you either. So the question is, how do we transform this energy? Tibetans are all about transforming everything, and so are the Sufis. These are my two great teachers in the emotional realm. Then the third stanza says the dark thought, the shame, the malice, wishing somebody uh, a bad fortune, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the center. Now, he's talking about that this is all basic guidance. The worst thing you can think of, malice, is pretty dark. Uh, there's a lot of energy in there. There must be a lot of energy in that if you're really, really thinking about, how you can get even with somebody. And there's a whole lot of other emotions, high or low or neutral, that are in there. But he says, yeah, invite them in the, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, to be grateful for every emotion, no matter dark or light. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the center. And I could see Rumi just tapping his chest there, from the center. Because that's the work we've been working on since March. If you've been coming and going or been here the whole time, we're working about dropping into a deeper level of consciousness. And that's what the deepest level of consciousness is what Rumi calls the center. And, all of a sudden you're pissed off. All of a sudden you're jealous. All of a sudden you're feeling anxious. Well, you could look at it like this. Oh, yeah, it's like a temple bell ringing in a way. Once you commit to working with all the emotions and just inviting them in, that little, it's like a bell goes off after you work with it for a while. And you just say, okay, got to take that down. Again, our one central image we've been using, if you're new, you may have not heard this, but we're constantly, moment by moment, breath by breath, dropping the mind into the heart. That doesn't mean we're getting rid of the mind and rational thought and where the ego lives in the mind. The ego does not live at the deepest level of consciousness. It's beyond its pay grade. So when you drop the mind into the heart, we leave the ego up there, but we put everything else into the deepest level of consciousness. So we go there. And so, hey, I got, if it's really, really overtaken you on a given day, which I get overtaken all the time by emotions, overwhelmed by emotions. Overwhelm itself is a bunch of emotions undealt with, isn't it? Think about that. When you feel overwhelmed, it's not an emotion. It's a whole bunch of emotions, whole waves of emotion that we're either trying to fight. One of my favorite mythological characters from Celtic history is Cuchulainn, who is the greatest of great hero mythological, and he's so strong that he eventually somebody said, "Yeah, can you beat the ocean?" And so he runs into the surf with his sword, and he's flailing at the waves, and they just keep coming. That's sort of how I lived a lot of my life. I don't know about you. You can't beat these things. You just can't. And as a matter of fact, we're getting a lot of energy. Portugal is the world leader in getting energy out of waves. They have these long, snaky kind of things that they put off the coast of Portugal, and the waves come in, moves the snake, moves these, and it's a wave power. So doesn't matter what the wave is, high or low or neutral. It has power. It has power, and that power is yours. You see. Now, there are some things. The different traditions have different ways of languaging about it. But there are things that are mistaken for emotions that actually aren't. And that the Tibetans call them, they have a list of the four immeasurables. These are things that are beyond measurement. They're in you. And I look at, from my viewpoint, I look at a kind of, see it in threes. And, the Enneagram sees it that way too. 3 times 3 is 9. But uh, peace, peace is an emotion. It's your birthright. It's in you. Joy, which the revival chorus was singing about. Joy, the world can't give it to you, and the world can't take it away because it's in there. You see, so peace, joy, and if you're on the wavelength, you're thinking, well, what else? Love. These are words now, but they're trying to say, the traditions are all saying there's something that is in you. And if you think love is an emotion, well, we sort of mishmash all these things together. Peace, joy, or love doesn't depend. Doesn't depend. These aren't things that come and go. They are the fabric of consciousness itself from these traditions. And, all the traditions have different ways of talking about. Maybe there's 4, maybe there's 5, but the traditions have a way of saying there's something that doesn't come or go. Now, if you don't feel too joyful, that just means you're out of touch with it. If you can't access the love, you're out of touch with it. That's easy. It happens all the time because stuff gets in the way. We've got the teaching of the veils from the Sufis. Or things can go cover it over. You could be obscured, of course. This is the classic thing here. That diamond at the bottom, that's these things that are your birthright, your richness, peace, joy, love. And then things happen. Now you can't access it. You get all, balled up. You get all shook up, and it's almost as if you've forgotten that these things are yours. They're your birthright. And so the only thing you can do, when you're like this, is settle down. That we're learning how to go to that place for ourselves. First of all, that's why in Tonglen, which is our, it's a love practice, really. Remember, the Buddha sees love as wisdom and compassion united. So that is your birthright. That's your nature. They would say that's the nature of the universe. So when we do Tonglen, which is basically seen as a compassion practice, the first part of it is the wisdom part. Wisdom is always space. Notice how little, you can't see the space in this now because it's all stirred up. So the first part, that's why we just do some breathing in Tonglen, and we're breathing for ourselves. We're creating space, which is the same as wisdom for a Buddhist. And then once we get some space in ourselves, once we get some openness in ourselves, then we can shift to do it for another. And then that's the compassion part. So self-compassion first, then compassion for others. Yeah. But I hope you can take away from that, no matter what happens in this life. And we have testimony from this in all the traditions, the Jewish tradition, or the guys who went through the Holocaust had everything taken away from them, even their name. They were just a number. Native Americans in this culture, they had their language taken away, had their names taken away. They had to have Anglo names. They know this, though. They know that you cannot take away your own peace, your own joy, and love. Ultimately, these are the inexhaustibles, and it's good to know that, especially when you're in a dark time. I mean, you have to go deeper than the mind to find them, though, which is what we're doing here. It's why we talk a bit. We're working with words. We're working in the mind, but now we'll do a practice. The essence of it is to go deeper than the mind, into the heart, into the soul. Different ways of talking about that. Okay, so let's do that.